Alrighty, so I thought the audio on the other one came out like decent enough, so it was good enough for me. I don't know if it was good enough for you. Let me know in the comments down below. But today we're going to be taking a look at another collection assortment that I still have left of my retro game collection, because pretty much every one of these games has a story as to why I have them. But there's two that don't. We're going to be talking about NES today, and we'll go ahead and just get the two that don't out of the way, which might surprise some people because you would think that these were games that, I don't know, I have a bunch of nostalgia for, but I really don't. I didn't have them as a kid, and that would be The Legend of Zelda and The Adventure of Link. You know, I had these games in my collection because they were crispy gold cart copies, and I like the way they look. And I didn't feel like selling these, and I wanted to keep them because I like the way they look. So, you know, no real story with these. I didn't have these as a kid, so, you know, I just wanted to show those off, I guess, very quickly. Now, starting things off, this will probably be the thumbnail title. This is not a game that I would consider good. I mean, the music's good in it, but everything else stinks. WWF WrestleMania. There's our thumbnail. WWF WrestleMania for the NES. So I remember we were living in an apartment, and across the hall from us, there was a guy who like worked and did like the sports report on like a local news station, and he once gave me a handheld John Elway football like Tiger game, and I thought that was really cool. But I used to play this game a ton in that apartment. Like, I specifically remember sitting in front of the TV at that specific apartment. Like, the layout of it, like, you would walk in and like the living room was to the right, the kitchen was to the the living room was to the left, the kitchen was to the right, and then in the back were the two bedrooms, and there was a bathroom in between them. It was a pretty small place. But I love the music in this game. Like, I never understood it. Like, when you play as Hogan, like, the cross, like, flies across the screen and stuff. Like, the power-ups were really weird. There's only, like, 6 people in the game. You got Hogan, Randy Savage, Andre the Giant, Honky Tonk Man, Ted DiBiase, and Bam Bam Bigelow. It's a terrible wrestling game, but there is a ton of nostalgia for it. And yeah, it's got Hogan on the cover. I gotta have it. So, you know, I definitely remember playing this game so much. I was terrible at it, and that was pretty much it. Next up, Techmo Bowl. Now, most people would have Techmo Super Bowl. I'm not going with that. I'm going with Techmo Bowl, the original, because I used to play this over at my uncle's apartment a lot. This would be a living room title where there would be like a bunch of people over there playing Techmo Bowl. Of course, you have the Bo Jackson glitch and stuff like that, but it was such a cool game because it was one of the first, if not the first sports games to have like the actual people and to have statistics based on them and based on their sort of real world abilities. Although it was a bit, you know, overstated at times. Like, Bo Jackson was an animal, but he wasn't running like down to the other end zone, avoiding all these tackles, and then coming all the way back up with no problem. But I just remember playing this game a ton at my uncle's house. Ready, down, hike, 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 hike. Like, that's forever burned in my mind. And I love this game. You know, even at an older age, like, I used to play this over at my buddy's house on his NES when we were, like, in high school and stuff like that. We would do Tecmo Bowl stuff. Couldn't pick the Raiders, though. Weren't allowed to pick the Raiders. So these next two games are also, once again, games that I played at my uncle's house in his apartment. We'll start out with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. It has to be Mike Tyson's Punch-Out because this was like the coolest thing in the world. Because once again, much like with Tecmo Bowl, you have Mike Tyson himself, the baddest dude on the planet. Now, of course, later renditions of the game lost the Mike Tyson name front because of the fact that, you know, he was in jail. He was a bad boy. But I love this game, dude. Like, I think this is one of the most perfect sports games ever because of the progression, the unique characters, how the characters are portrayed. And I know they're like based on like stereotypes and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily talking about that aspect of it, but they all have personality. They all have unique things about them when you're fighting them, and tells and stuff like that you kind of have to master. And then of course you get to Tyson, and he just knocks your head off. Like he wants to murder you, like he probably wanted to murder a lot of people during this frame of his life point. But you know, this game was just awesome. I remember my uncle would have his friend Bruce over, and Bruce was like really into like the underground like fish market, like not like eating fish, but like aquarium fish, and like he worked at a fish store, and sometimes he would have like fights there and stuff, like an African cichlid versus like another African cichlid and stuff. Like, it was crazy shit, dude. It was crazy shit. There was money going around there. I was too young to like be involved in it, but I went like once or twice, and I heard them talking about it. But yes, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, another game that I played at my uncle's a ton. And the first NES game I ever played, the first video game I ever played, which shouldn't come as a huge surprise, Super Mario Brothers / Duck Hunt. Now, this game definitely like transcended a lot of things. You know, once again, I first played it at my uncle's house, but I remember when my uncle gave me his NES, this was one of the games that he gave me, along with Techmo Bowl. I don't remember, I think we had Punch-Out! As well, but I'm not 100% sure. But I definitely remember Super Mario Brothers, and I definitely remember having Techmo Bowl, because I used to play it with my dad. And I remember one time my dad got to like level 8-3, and like he picked me up from school and was like, "We got to get home." And I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "I'm on level 8-3. I have to beat this today." So like that was definitely a very memorable thing. But this, you know, being the first video game that I ever played, you know, essentially putting me on a course of life that would bring me to like, you know, this moment right now. Like, you gotta have this game, you know, just a great game. Duck Hunt was fine for what it was, you know, it was cool to have the zapper and stuff like that, but Mario Brothers was definitely the showcase piece. And the final game, you know, I played a lot of stuff during my NES times. I remember my mom had to babysit this kid from school because her mom was sick, and the kid brought over Top Gun. So I played a lot of Top Gun with her, but like that game sucked. And I remember she was allergic to food dye red 40. So like she couldn't eat anything that had food dye like red 40 in it. And my mom was like, "What the fuck?" Like she had to figure out like what food didn't have like this color additive into it, you know. And there was other games, but I just kind of wanted to keep stuff that I have vivid memories of, and it really doesn't get more vivid for me than Double Dragon. So my parents were doing something, and they brought me over to this kid's house. His name was Joe, and Joe had a sister as well to babysit me. And I remember Joe was like 2 or 3 years older than me, and I want to say his sister was like 1 or 2 years older than me. And I was playing NES with Joe in his room, and I forget what game we were playing. And I'll never forget this. I'll literally never forget this. He looks me dead in the face. He's like, "Yo, son, you ever played Double Dragon before?" And I'm like, "Double Dragon? What's that?" And I was like, "No, I don't know what that is." And then he busted out Double Dragon, and I was like, "Holy Christ on a cracker. This is the greatest thing ever. This is amazing. You're beating up people in a video game? This is the greatest thing I've ever seen." And like, we sat there and played Double Dragon. We would take turns and stuff like that. And after that, I always wanted to go to Joe's house. I was like, you know, "If you want to drop me off at Joe's house," and my mom was like, I don't really need to. I'm like, "But he's got Double Dragon and we don't, so I would like to go to Joe's house." But then I remember, you know, because I was probably 6, 7 around that time frame when I was in middle school. And I was like 13. Is the infamous Wayne story. I've told this before, but me and Pecker Dupree went to a micro center. It's not micro, it was Micro Play, and it was like a video game chain. There was one in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we were looking at games there. And so I think he was trading in something to get another console or something like that. And I remember I was looking at like Sega Saturn stuff because I was the weird person who had a Sega Saturn. And we saw a copy of Double Dragon. And we're like, oh man, Double Dragon, like, oh, you know, that game's tough. And there's this motherfucker behind the counter. His name was Wayne. He was probably like 40 years old. Kind of imagine Dodongo from the Game Chasers as far as like size and stature is concerned. But he had more of a skullet, and it was blonde, and he had glasses, and his stupid little name tag said Wayne. And he looks at both of us, he's like, Double Dragon? Everybody's beating Double Dragon. I'm like, who the fuck? I will kick you in your head, you small, smelly man named Wayne. So after that, we went back to Pecker Dupree's house. It was at my house. Well, I didn't have Double Dragon. Pecker Dupree had Double Dragon. And I'll tell you a funny story about his NES at the end of this. So it must have been at Pecker Dupree's house. And we went and we stayed up all fucking night to beat Double Dragon. So that if we ever went back there to Micro Play, I believe it was called, we could be like, hey, fuck you, Wayne, you stupid fuck. But we ended up, and I'll wrap this video up with this, we ended up, we came up with this idea where we're like, yo, what if we take the inside of an N64 and put it in an NES, and then it'll be like 64 bits. We're 13 years old here. Like, we're not like little kids with like no sort of mind. Like, we probably should have been like more well adjusted for that age, at least in terms of like what is possible and what is not possible. And son of a bitch, we tried, man. We came up with this vision to put an N64 inside of an NES. And I don't really know what we thought our end game was there, but literally it just ended up fucking up his NES and like ruining it, and like that was it. We just kind of moved on. So that is my NES collection. Small but mighty. I have smaller ones. I'm GameCube. That's 2 games, and they're not games that you would expect. Maybe we'll do that one next, because there's a lot of stories attached to one of the games, and there really should be 3 games, but I have a reason as to why it's only 2. But yeah, so that is the collection. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you are a channel member, you got it early. Hopefully I managed to clean up the audio. I think I have it down to a science. And thank you guys for checking out this video. Let me know what system you want to see next. You have, I mean, there's 1 Sega CD game, 2 32X games, 1 Game Gear game. DS might not be too bad. Maybe we'll do DS next. But let me know what you want to see. And as always, guys, thanks for checking out this video. If you're new, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.